أهلا بكم إلى حوارات السياق. تسابق الحكومة الليبية الجديدة الزمن وسط مخاوف من عدم نيلها ثقة البرلمان ونوابه المنقسمين بين الشرق والغرب، ما قد يعيد خلط الأوراق من جديد ويربك المشهد السياسي الليبي وفق مراقبين. لمناقشة هذا الموضوع نستضيف بورويلة، مؤسسة منظمة كود on the road. مرحبا آية، دعينا نبدأ بآخر التطورات. الاتفاق الأخير في جنيف، هل هو بداية الحل في ليبيا أم يشبه ما سبقه من اتفاقات؟
This is a serious question that's obviously on the mind of all Libyans, and they're very much afraid that this process is going to result in another forever interim government. If you remember the Libyan political agreement that produced the GNA was supposed to be effective for 1 year with a maximum renewal for another year, but now the GNA is in its 6th year of governance. So Libyans are very much worried that this might be a repeat of the past. I think that there is potential for the LPDF's outcome to be successful, given that foreign countries and Libyans themselves are very vigilant and demand that the new interim government is held to its responsibilities.
هل سيلتئم البرلمان بنوابه المنقسمين بين الشرق والغرب ليعطي الثقة للحكومة الجديدة حسب بنود الاتفاق؟
They will have to convene to either reject or accept this new proposed interim government. There is actually one parliament in Libya, the House of Representatives, but there's been some members who've decided to move to the west in objection to the parliament. The green light from the parliament is very important to give the interim government a legal status and to make it at least legitimate somewhat in the eyes of Libyans. If you recall, the GNA never won the ratification from the Libyan parliament, even though it was one of the stipulations of the Libyan political agreement. So until today, in many ways, the GNA is unconstitutional, and this lack of legitimacy has further divided the country.
ليس هناك حتى اتفاق على المدينة التي يفترض عقد الجلسة فيها لتأمين جميع النواب. لماذا البلد منقسم في ليبيا إلى هذا الحد؟
This is the number one question that I think all viewers must understand, and this is where the context of the conflict begins after the intervention in 2011. So Libya has had its first elections for the first time since the 1960s, in 2012 and 2014. In the last democratic elections in 2014, Islamist parties lost. And when they lost, a militia alliance, a Misrata militia alliance called Operation Dawn, invaded the capital and forced the elected parliament to move to the east. So there's actually one parliament in Libya that's internationally recognized. In this physical coup, this violent coup, forced the parliament to move to the east. And once the militias took over Tripoli, the divide was brought to life.
ما هي أبرز التحديات أمام رئيس المجلس الرئاسي المنفي ورئيس الوزراء بيبة؟
The major challenge right now is the same challenge that Libya has faced since 2012. It's the saturation of militias in the country. How to dismantle the militias. There's been so many talks in Paris, in Cairo, in Abu Dhabi to talk about how to dismantle the militias, which was one of the mandates of the GNA. So this is going to be a huge challenge for them. What to do with the militias in Tripoli who are still very much in control. Now that is why there is a proposal to move the new interim government to Sirt. Sirt is where the Joint Military Committee can work together. It is considered more neutral, but most importantly, it is not overtaken by the militias that can impede the work of the new government. So I think it's it's also a gesture of reconciliation between the two sides, find a good neutral spot, but mostly it's about giving the interim government space away from the militias so they can do their job properly.
كشف رئيس الوزراء الليبي الجديد أنه بصدد تكليف وزير الداخلية السابق والمرشح الخاسر لرئاسة الحكومة فتحي بشاغة بدور في الحكومة المرتقبة. كيف تفهمين هذه الخطوة؟
Here's the thing, and it goes back to the first question you asked about why is the country divided. So Fethi Bashagha was one of the architects of Operation Dawn, Fajr Libya. And this is the militia alliance that took over, that staged the violent coup against the elected parliament. So Bashagha is very powerful. This is one of the reasons he was appointed by Sarraj to appease this militia faction. And if you remember, this past fall, Sarraj had suspended him from his post, and he came back nonetheless. So Bashagha has his Operation Dawn behind him, the militia alliance. So I imagine that Dbeiba wants to appoint him to make him a partner in demilitarization. The idea is he has a bunch of militias behind him. If we don't integrate him somehow, he's going to act as a spoiler again to parliamentary elections.
هل ينهي الاتفاق الجديد مسألة المرتزقة في ليبيا إذا ما أخذنا في عين الاعتبار الموقف التركي؟
There's already been an agreement in the successful Geneva 5+5 committee last fall. So the GNA and the Libyan National Army had agreed that they're moving forward. They were going to remove all foreign mercenaries. Of course, the deadline has passed for this to happen, but there is great international pressure. And even recently, the State Department had made a declaration saying that all mercenaries must leave, and Turkey must decide whether they want to be friends of Libya or not. So it is really important that the mercenaries leave. Until now, over 15,000 Syrian mercenaries from the Syrian National Army were transferred to Libya. You cannot have elections under these conditions. So all foreign mercenaries, Russian, Turkish, all of them must leave. And I think the international community is serious about making sure that happens.
ماذا عن التدخلات الخارجية في ليبيا؟ هل سينهيها هذا الاتفاق؟
This is something that must happen. This has already been stipulated in the Geneva 5+5. And Libyans hope that it will put an end to foreign intervention. To me, the biggest embodiment of foreign intervention of the past 6 years was the GNA. The GNA has been foreign appointed. And if you're a foreign appointed entity that has failed to gain ratification from your parliament or from the Libyan people themselves, you are not accountable to your own people. You are accountable to foreign influences that appointed you. So the most important thing is to have elections, free and democratic elections. So Libyans have a government that is appointed by them, not by the LPDF, not by UNSMIL, not by force. So this, to me, if we have elections and we have Libyans take their sovereignty back, this is the most fundamental way of ending foreign intervention.
الإخوان أحيوا أخيراً ملف الاستفتاء على الدستور. لماذا باعتقادك؟
So most Libyans want elections, and this is not a conjecture. This is a fact. There has been studies by the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, by USAID. The majority of Libyans, despite everything, want elections. They want that right to vote for their own government. So they want, but the people who don't want the elections are, as you can imagine, the people who keep losing elections. So the Muslim Brotherhood is deeply unpopular in Libya. They're the biggest reason that the country is divided. So in 2014, when the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamists lost elections, they overtook the capital by force. So they are very much invested to make sure elections don't happen. And I imagine after everything that's happened in the past 6 years, they're going to be even more popular in the next year than they are already today. So the constitutional referendum is kind of a ruse. It is an idea to try to postpone elections as much as possible.
هل تعتقدين أنها خطوة للتغطية على أولوية الانتخابات؟
Absolutely. They want to create a constitutional referendum. People keep talking about it, keep postponing deadlines forever and ever. And the thing is, there's already a constitutional basis for holding elections. You don't need to do this now. You can have a constitutional referendum after a government is elected, a legitimate government is elected by the people, for the people. So this is yet another last-ditch effort by the Islamists to make sure Libyans don't have a say in who governs them.
ما المطلوب من الإدارة الأمريكية الجديدة أن تقدمه لحل مسألة ليبيا؟
To put pressure on the dismantling of the militias. It's been 6 years. The GNA was supposed to, this was their job, by the way, to dismantle the militias. And rather than dismantling them, they chose to co-opt them to stay in power. Now you have to remember that Libya is an incredibly resource-rich country, and it's not only resource-rich, and I feel that this is not mentioned enough. Libya has a lot of frozen funds, around 60 billion. There are a lot of people who want to access that. And already in the past 6 years, we've seen a government that is resistant to audits. The central bank has been acting like a slush fund for militias. There is no oversight. So I think one of the ways the United States can be helpful in Libya is first make sure that all mercenaries leave, the elections happen, that there is an audit and oversight to the Central Bank of Libya and the Libyan Foreign Bank. And there's a mechanism to hold, to first of all, combat corruption and to hold people who are responsible for embezzlement, for any other forms of money laundering responsible. So these are the ways that the United States can definitely help.
ما سبب استمرار عدم استقرار القطاع النفطي في ليبيا ما يؤثر على الاقتصاد وأوضاع الناس؟
Well, this is one of the problems when you're an oil-dependent country, and this is a failure not only of the past 10 years where we had civil wars, but this is a failure, of course, that that has been entrenched since the Gaddafi regime. Being an economy that is not diversified or an economy that's against entrepreneurship or innovation makes you vulnerable to fluctuations in the oil market. So hopefully oil will rise again, and you know, even more. But we must focus. Libya has a lot of frozen funds. They need to be used for innovation, for development, and definitely to revive and revamp the educational system. I believe our educational system is very much behind in both standard and quality, and we must start investing in our human capital so we can be competitive again.
شكرا آية على المشاركة في حوارات السياق. بهذا نصل إلى ختام الحوار. السلام عليكم.